Alright, so now's the time. You've been putting it off long enough. You're finally ready to add the hardwood to the rest of your house. But you want to join it in with what you've already laid. It's not going to be that hard. Stick around and we'll show you a few tips to get you started. Hello DIY Nation, welcome back to another episode of U-Floor Flooring Tips and Tricks. I'm your host Zanone Hunt. So sometimes we want to put hardwood in our house and it's not always in our budget to do the whole house at one time. So we'll do the living room and the hallway and then we'll skip out on the bedrooms and then we'll come back and do those later. Well, one of our customers called and said they're ready to go on with the rest of the hardwood in their house. I wanted to know if we could come by and check it out and see if there's any way we could join back in with the existing hardwood. So we're going to take you step by step through what it took to get the new hardwood clicked in with the old hardwood and keeping it straight throughout all the rooms. So here's how we went to do that. I won't waste your time. Let's jump right into it. Okay, so on one side of the hallway we had tongue and on the other side of the hallway we had groove. On this particular side we had the tongue. So I went to both sides of the doorway and measured just a common number of 12 inches off of the face. Then I grabbed my straight edge or level, whatever you have, and marked that all the way across so that I had some form of reference point for snapping my line. Now that I have that line drawn across, I want to go to the other side of the room where the other wall is and measure from there to my line back just to see what number I have here. And it looks like we're coming up with 124 3/4. Now that's on this side of the door. I also want to check on the other side of the door just to see how close I am. Wow, that's pretty close. And now that I know the number to pull for my control line, I want to go to the other end of the room and also measure out 124 3/4 and make a crow's foot. Next, I'll be drilling a screw in so that I can wrap my chalk line around that and stretch it across the whole room. Now I want to make mention right here, life is not always perfect, so I would definitely pull my string across and make sure that it's on my pencil mark before I snap that line, and if it's not, you may have to do a little bit of adjusting to make sure that it is. Once again, I want to double check now that my line is snapped and see that I am right at 12 inches. It's looking beautiful. This side and the other side, just as beautiful. Okay, so now that's going to give me some form of reference point to pull off of when I'm going to face them. I also want to check this bump out over here to see how on it is or how off it is. And on this side I have 56 1/8. And of course over on the other side you'll see I have 56 3/16. That's 1/16 difference. I'll take it. Alright, it's time to roll out the paper. So right here, I'm studying about where I had snapped my line and I realized, I'm probably not going to have enough room to put 2 rows of paper because my line is so close. So I grabbed my tape measure and did a little bit of measuring, and sure enough, if I try to go 2 rows of paper, I'll cover up my line. So what I did was to take the end of my tape, put it on my chalk line, measure out 12 inches on both ends of the room, and then just re-snap my line. So let's keep in mind, whenever I'm setting my first boards to go across the floor, instead of pulling 12 inches off of the face of them to my line, I will now be pulling 24 inches off of the face of them to my line to help keep my board straight all the way across. Of course, you guys just saw me do this, so basically I'm just putting 2 crow's foot, pulling a string across and snapping it just like we did before. Nothing new. Now that that's done, I can continue on with rolling out the paper. I don't know, maybe I'm just a little bit paranoid, but I like checking my numbers periodically to make sure we're still looking good. Looking good on that side, and this side, 24 inches. The plan is coming together. Now this is where our control line comes in heavy. Remember, I said you'll want to take your tape measure and measure off the face of the boards and stretch it out to your mark and make sure that it is on 24 inches. That way you can keep your floor straight all the way across the room. Otherwise you don't have any way of telling how to keep it straight. I generally try not to put too many face nails in this first board, but every once in a while one is necessary, and I do like to try to put it down through a floor joist if possible. And the process for doing this is pretty much the same as I've been speaking of. You just put your next board up against the previous board, make sure that the face of them are at 24 inches from your chalk line, and nail it. Checking periodically as you go along to make sure you're good through the middle and at the ends. Boom, 24 inches. After I got finished nailing the first row across, I got some scrap blocks and screwed them down right behind the brakes and in the center of each board all the way across to hold it tight so that when I put my nail gun against them, my row doesn't move. Now back here in the back, we'll have to put a spline in and turn our wood backwards. As you can see with tongue and groove, when you're nailing this together, the tongue slips into the groove and that's what helps hold it together. But when you are having to go 2 grooves together, you take these little pieces of wood, which can be made out of scrap wood, and you slip them in through the back side of them, and that way it's kind of like you have a tongue on both sides, as you can see in this picture. That was actually our next step. I like to dry fit my splines and make sure they're going to be fine before I glue them and nail them permanently. That way if there's any tweaking that needs to happen, I can do so without any mess. Looks like this one's going to be a good, nice tight fit. Over here on the other side though, you can see where the new plywood that I had to put in is just a little bit thicker than the board that was laying on. So I need to take some of these little shims, and what I'm going to do is place them underneath the existing hardwood just to kind of pry them up a little bit. Not so much that you can notice a visual hump, but just enough to where I can get them to latch onto the next board, and then everything should be fine and it should just float right across without anything being noticeable. Okay, so this board is a little bit lower than this floor right here, so I cut some of these little wedges, stuff them up underneath there to raise that a little bit. Can't feel it at all. We're gonna want to lock this in. Go these in like that. Ooh, man, glove, look at that. Not only did I have to wedge that board up just a little bit, but also I wanted to glue it. The reason I like to glue it is because every once in a while when you're having to replace boards or you're having to put new boards in without nails and then going through the tongues, sometimes they can rub against each other, and if you lock them together with the glue, that kind of makes them as one piece so they don't rub. And just like on the other side, we're gonna have to put a spline in. When we were coming through the other door, we were showing the tongue on that side, but on this side, we're showing the groove. So as I said, we'll have to put a spline in so that we can turn these boards around and nail them forward with our nail gun. Looks like it's gonna be a good fit. Time to glue it up. I like to put glue right inside the channel, and also I like to glue the edge of the spline to make sure I get good coverage. I don't need these boards squeaky. Looks like it's going to be a good fit. Now some may say it's an overkill, but I'll say, why not be safe than sorry? I like to glue this first board going into it and nail it at the same time. And remember, I like pushing the glue up tight up against the existing floor so that it smushes the glue together and glues those boards together. Prevent it from rubbing and squeaking. And of course, you guys know the drill here. Now that I got my board in there, I like to measure off the face, find me a good common number to measure it on the other side, pull this chalk line all the way across, snap a line, and that control line is what I'm going to use to determine where my starter row goes in that room, and it helps me to keep it straight all the way across, just like in the previous room. We measure from the line to our boards and nail it across. So with that being said, looks like everything seemed to work out just fine. The job was a success in my opinion, and I think we got a lot done, considering we had to tear our particle board and replace it with real plywood. Well, I hope you guys learned something today. That wasn't too hard, was it? All right, so if you guys have any questions about what we just went over, please leave them in the comments. And also, if you have any ideas on future shows or questions that you want me to answer, if I don't know the answer, I'll find the answer, and then we'll make a video about it. How about that? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and also share this with somebody. Every time you guys like, it helps me a whole lot as far as this YouTube algorithm and everything goes. So whatever that means, make sure you hit the like button. Thank you guys again for watching, and we'll see you next time.